The alarm bell rang through the dark corridors of Mining Station Delta 7. Captain Jake Morrison rolled out of his narrow bunk and grabbed his worn uniform jacket. The red emergency lights painted everything the color of blood as he ran toward the command center. "What's the situation, Tom?" Morrison asked his weapons officer. Tom Hayes looked up from his screen with worried eyes. "Long-range sensors picked up something big, Captain. Really big. It's moving toward the inner systems." Morrison studied the data on the main screen. The object was massive, bigger than anything he had seen in his 20 years of military service. It was still far away, but it was definitely heading toward Earth. "Any word from the Council fleet?" Morrison asked. "Nothing yet, sir. They're probably having another meeting about it," Hayes said with disgust. Morrison understood his anger. The Galactic Council loved to talk and argue while real threats got closer every day. They had rules for everything: how to fight, when to fight, and most importantly, when not to fight. Humans were supposed to follow these rules if they wanted to stay in the Council. But Morrison remembered the old days, before the aliens came, before Earth joined the galaxy, when humans fought their own wars with their own rules. He walked to the window and looked out at the asteroid field. Somewhere out there, hidden between the rocks, was the UES Reaper, the ship that wasn't supposed to exist anymore. "Tom, send a message to Admiral Blake on Earth. Tell him the Watchers are awake." Hayes nodded and started typing. He knew what the message meant. They all did. The Reaper had been built in secret 15 years ago, just after Earth joined the Galactic Council. The Council had made Earth destroy most of its warships. They said human weapons were too violent, too dangerous for a peaceful galaxy. But some people in Earth's government were smarter than the Council thought. They built 12 prototype ships in hidden locations throughout human space. Ships that used the old human way of fighting. Ships built to kill, not to make friends. Morrison had commanded one of Earth's defense cruisers during the integration wars. He had seen how the Council fought their battles: clean, precise, limited. They would fire a few shots, accept surrender, and move on. It was civilized warfare. It was also weak. The Council species thought humans were useful but harmless. Good engineers and miners, but not real warriors. The reptilian Vorth, who controlled most of the Council's military, laughed at human battle reports. They said humans were too emotional to be good soldiers. Morrison knew better. He had fought alongside humans who died to protect their ships. He had seen human engineers fix weapons while under fire. He had watched human pilots ram their fighters into enemy ships to save their friends. The Council called it primitive. Morrison called it effective. His communicator buzzed. Admiral Blake's voice came through the static. "Jake, we need to talk. Can you use the secure channel?" Morrison walked to his private office and activated the encryption system. Blake's tired face appeared on the small screen. "Admiral, you look like hell," Morrison said. Blake rubbed his eyes. "Jake, that thing on your sensors isn't alone. We're tracking at least 200 similar objects moving toward the outer rim worlds. The Council's science division thinks they're ships." "What kind of ships?" "The kind that don't answer communication. Attempts. The kind that destroyed the Centauri colony last week." Morrison felt ice in his stomach. Centauri had 50,000 people. "Any survivors?" "None. The colony is just gone. Nothing left but ash and metal." Blake leaned forward on the screen. "Jake, the Council fleet is mobilizing, but their response time is terrible. They want to form committees and study the threat. Meanwhile, these things are getting closer to Earth every day." "What do you need from me, Admiral?" "I need you to wake up the Reaper. I need you to get her ready for war." Morrison was quiet for a long moment. Activating the Reaper would break every treaty Earth had signed with the Council. It would mean the end of his military career. It might mean the end of Earth's membership in the galactic community, but it might also mean the difference between Earth's survival and Earth's destruction. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "The Council's best guess is 3 weeks before they reach the outer colonies, 5 weeks before they reach Earth. I'll need all 12 of my crew back on station. They're already on their way. Jake, the Council can't know about this. If they find out we kept the prototypes, they'll kick Earth out of the Alliance. And if we don't use them, there might not be an Earth left to kick out. Blake nodded grimly. That's exactly right. Good luck, Captain. Earth is counting on you. The transmission ended, leaving Morrison alone with his thoughts. Through his window, he could see the running lights of a transport ship approaching the station. His crew was coming home. Morrison had served with these people for over a decade. They were the misfits and troublemakers of the Earth Defense Force. Too aggressive for the new diplomatic fleet, too independent for council oversight, too human for a sanitized galaxy. Lisa Park, his chief engineer, who could fix anything with spare parts and determination. Rick Stone, his navigator, who could plot a course through an asteroid field while half asleep. Dan Wells, his communications officer, who spoke 17 alien languages but preferred to communicate with his fists. And 9 others like them. Veterans of the old Earth military who remembered when humans fought to win, not to follow rules. The transport docked with a metallic clang. Morrison heard boots in the corridor and familiar voices arguing about something unimportant. His crew was home. Hayes appeared in the doorway. Captain, they're all here. Park wants to know if we're finally going to fire up the big guns. Morrison stood up and straightened his uniform. It was time to tell them the truth. The crew gathered in the station's small meeting room. 12 faces looked at him with mixture of curiosity and excitement. They all knew why they were here, but they wanted to hear him say it. Ladies and gentlemen, Morrison began, for the past 15 years we've been babysitting the most dangerous warship ever built by human hands. We've kept her systems maintained, her weapons calibrated, and her AI sleeping. Today, that changes. He activated the main screen, showing the sensor data from the approaching fleet. Something is coming. Something that has already destroyed an entire colony. The Council fleet will try to stop it using their rules and their politics and their careful strategies. They will fail. Park leaned forward. So we're going to stop it using our rules? Morrison smiled for the first time in weeks. We're going to stop it using no rules at all. We're going to fight like humans used to fight. Like we were born to fight. He looked at each of their faces. This will probably end our careers. It might end our lives. It will definitely make us enemies of people who used to be our allies. Anyone who wants to transfer to a safe posting can do so now, no questions asked. No one moved. Stone spoke up from the back. Captain, with respect, we've been waiting 15 years for this conversation. We didn't stay here to play it safe. The others nodded agreement. Morrison felt something he hadn't felt since the old days. Pride in his crew, pride in his species, and underneath it all, a cold anticipation that made his blood sing. All right then, let's go wake up the Reaper. As they prepared to leave the station, Morrison took one last look at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was approaching with the intention of destroying everything humans had built. They were about to learn that humans built more than cities and farms. They built monsters, and now it was time to let the monsters hunt. The shuttle moved slowly through the asteroid field, its lights cutting through the darkness. Captain Morrison sat in the pilot's seat, carefully steering between the floating rocks. Behind him, his 12 crew members were silent, each lost in their own thoughts. There, said Rick Stone, pointing ahead. Grid reference Alpha 7. Morrison looked where Stone was pointing. At first he saw nothing but more asteroids. Then his eyes adjusted, and he saw it. A massive shape hidden in the shadow of a giant rock. The UES Reaper. Even in the darkness, the ship looked deadly. It was longer than 3 football fields and covered in weapon ports. Unlike the smooth, elegant ships the Council preferred, the Reaper looked like what it was. A machine built for war. She's beautiful, whispered Lisa Park. Morrison smiled. Park had helped design the ship's engines 15 years ago. She knew every bolt and wire in the massive vessel. The shuttle docked with a soft bump. Morrison led his crew through the airlock and into the ship's corridors. Emergency lighting came on automatically, casting red shadows on the walls. The Reaper felt different from Council ships. The corridors were wider to allow for damage control teams. The walls were thicker for protection. Everything was built to survive battle, not to look pretty. Park, get to engineering and start the main reactor, Morrison ordered. Stone, check navigation systems. Hayes, I want all weapon systems online in 4 hours. His crew scattered to their stations. Morrison walked to the bridge alone. The command center was dark and quiet. He sat in the captain's chair and placed his hand on the control panel. Lights began to flicker on around the bridge. Computer, this is Captain Morrison. Authorization Omega 77, a calm female voice answered. Authorization confirmed. Welcome back, Captain. I am ERA's Advanced Reconnaissance and Engagement System. All primary systems are in standby mode. ERA's, what's our current status? Reactor offline, weapons offline, life support at minimum levels. Shall I begin full activation sequence? Morrison hesitated. Once Ares was fully active, there would be no hiding the ship from Council sensors. They would be committed to this path. His communicator buzzed. Admiral Blake's voice was urgent. Jake, we just lost contact with the Henderson colony. That's 3 colonies in 2 days. Whatever these things are, they're not slowing down. Morrison closed his eyes for a moment. Then he opened them and spoke clearly. Ares, begin full activation. Priority 1 alert status. Understood, Captain. Beginning startup sequence now. The ship came alive around him. Lights brightened, ventilation systems hummed to life, and he could feel the deck vibrating as massive systems powered up throughout. The vessel, deep in the ship's core, the fusion reactor ignited. The Reaper had enough fuel to fight for months without stopping. Its weapons were powered by the same technology that lit Earth's cities. Park's voice came over the intercom. Captain, main power is stable. We're at 60% and climbing. Good. Work, Lisa. How long until we can move? Give me 30 minutes for the engines, but Captain, some of these systems haven't been tested in 15 years. I can't guarantee everything will work perfectly. Nothing ever works perfectly in war, Morrison replied. Do your best. On the main screen, Morrison watched as his crew brought the ship online. Status lights changed from red to yellow to green. Weapon systems that could destroy entire cities were now ready for battle. Hayes reported from the weapons control room. Captain, all missile tubes loaded, railguns charged, nuclear, warheads armed and ready. Stone's voice came from navigation. Jump drive calibrated. I can get us anywhere in the system in under 10 minutes. Morrison nodded. The Reaper wasn't just a warship. It was the most advanced warship humans had ever built. It could appear anywhere in the solar system without warning. It could strike targets from impossible distances, and it carried enough firepower to level continents. The Council had banned such weapons after Earth joined the galactic community. They said no civilized species needed such destructive capability. But the things approaching Earth weren't civilized. AREs spoke again. Captain, I am detecting multiple transmissions from Council Fleet Command. They are reporting contact with the unknown vessels. Put it on speaker. The bridge filled with panicked voices from Council ships. Morrison heard battle reports in a dozen alien languages, all saying the same thing. The enemy was bigger than expected, stronger than expected, and completely without mercy. Council Cruiser Harmony, this is Fleet Command. Report your status. Static. Filled the channel for several seconds. Then a weak voice answered. Fleet Command, the Harmony is gone. They don't just destroy ships, they consume them. The hull, the crew, everything, it's like they're eating our vessels. Morrison felt cold. These weren't just aggressive aliens. They were something much worse. Captain, Ares said quietly. Based on the battle reports, I estimate the Council fleet has lost 30% of its strength in the first engagement. The Council had started with 200 ships. If they had lost 60 vessels in one battle, the enemy was more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Admiral Blake's face appeared on Morrison's personal communicator. The Admiral looked exhausted and scared. Jake, it's worse than we thought. These things, the survivors are calling them devourers. They don't want to conquer territory or negotiate treaties. They just want to consume everything in their path. How many ships are we facing? Our best count is over 200. Maybe more. And Jake, they're not just ships. They're alive somehow. Part machine, part organic. They heal damage by consuming matter around them. Morrison stared at the data Blake was sending. The enemy vessels were massive. Some were larger than Earth's biggest space stations, and they were all heading directly toward the inner planets. "What's the Council's plan?" Morrison asked. Blake laughed bitterly. "They want to form a committee to study the threat. They're talking about sending a diplomatic mission to establish communication, while these things eat their way through human space." "Exactly. Jake, the Earth Defense Fleet is moving to intercept the enemy at Jupiter. 30 ships against over 200. It's going to be a massacre." Morrison understood. Earth's official military followed Council rules. They would fight bravely and honorably and die pointlessly because they weren't allowed to fight dirty. How long until the Earth fleet engages the enemy? 6 hours. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was ready. His ship was armed and dangerous. And somewhere beyond Jupiter, an alien fleet was approaching that wanted to consume every living thing in the solar system. "Ares, plot a course for the Jupiter intercept point. Maximum speed. Captain, at maximum speed we will arrive before the Earth Defense Fleet. You will be alone against over 200 enemy vessels." Morrison smiled grimly. "That's exactly what I'm counting on. The Earth fleet fights like the Council taught them. We're going to fight like humans." Park's voice came over the intercom. "Captain, engines are ready. We can jump whenever you give the order," Hayes added. "All weapons show green." "We're loaded for bear, sir," Stone reported. "Navigation locked on target, ready to jump on your command." Morrison stood up from his chair. Around him, the bridge hummed with power. The Reaper was awake and hungry for battle. "Ares, are you ready for combat?" "Captain, all systems are optimal. However, I must point out that the odds against us are approximately 200 to 1. "Good," Morrison said. "Then it's a fair fight." He activated the ship-wide intercom. "All hands, this is the captain. In 5 minutes, we're going to jump into the middle of the largest space battle in human history. The enemy thinks they can consume our world because they've beaten everyone else they've encountered. They're about to learn that they've never fought humans before." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew on the monitor screens throughout the ship. "We're going to show them what happens when you threaten Earth. We're going to show the galaxy what humans can do when we stop playing by other people's rules. And we're going to remind everyone why humans were the apex predators on their own world." Morrison sat back down and gripped the arms of his chair. "Ares, initiate jump. Target, Jupiter intercept point. All weapons hot. Jump initiated. Time to target, 30 seconds. The stars outside began to blur as the Reaper tore through space, toward its destiny. Behind them, the asteroid field fell away. Ahead of them waited an enemy that had consumed 17 galaxies, but they had never consumed a galaxy protected by humans. The Reaper disappeared into hyperspace, carrying 12 angry humans toward the fight of their lives. The Reaper dropped out of hyperspace like a ghost appearing from nowhere. Captain Morrison stared at the main screen and felt his blood turn cold. The space around Jupiter was filled with alien ships. Massive, twisted things that looked more like living creatures than machines. Their hulls pulsed with strange lights and tentacle-like appendages reached out from their sides. Some were the size of city blocks. Others were as large as Manhattan. "My God," whispered Rick Stone from his navigation station. Morrison had seen many alien ships during his years of service, but nothing like these. The Devourers looked hungry. They moved through space like sharks swimming through dark water, searching for prey. "Ares, give me a count," Morrison ordered. "I detect 214 hostile vessels, Captain. They are arranged in a loose formation approximately 50,000 kilometers ahead of our position." Hayes looked up from his weapons console. "Captain, they haven't seen us yet. We dropped out behind that gas cloud. We have maybe 2 minutes before they detect us." Morrison studied the enemy formation. The Devourers were spread out across a huge area of space, moving slowly toward the inner planets. They weren't expecting trouble. They had probably never faced real resistance before. That was about to change. "All hands. Battle stations," Morrison announced over the ship's intercom. "This is not a drill. We are about to engage 200 enemy vessels. We will hit them hard, hit them fast, and keep hitting them until they're all dead." Emergency lights flashed red throughout the ship. Morrison could hear his crew running to their positions, their boots echoing through the corridors. "Captain," Stone said nervously, "shouldn't we wait for the Earth Defense Fleet? They'll be here in 4 hours." Morrison shook his head. "In 4 hours, these things will be past Jupiter and heading for Mars. We stop them here, or Earth dies." Turned to Hayes. "Tom, load all missile tubes. I want nuclear warheads in the first salvo." "Sir, the Council banned nuclear weapons in space combat." "The Council isn't here," Morrison cut him off. "And these things just ate 3 human colonies. Load the nukes." Hayes nodded and began entering commands. All around the ship, missile. Tubes opened and armed themselves with weapons that could crack moons. Park's voice came over the intercom from engineering. "Captain, all systems show green. Engines at full power. We're ready for anything." Morrison gripped the arms of his chair. "Ares, take us in. Full speed straight at the center of their formation. Captain, that is suicide. We cannot survive a direct assault against such numbers." "We're not trying to survive, Ares. We're trying to kill as many of them as possible before they know what hit them." The Reaper shot forward like a bullet. The ship was built for speed as well as firepower, and it covered the distance to the enemy fleet in less than 3 minutes. The first Devourer ship to detect them was a medium-sized vessel with writhing tentacles along its sides. It began to turn toward the Reaper, moving slowly like a giant beast waking up. It never got the chance to fully turn. "Fire all missiles," Morrison ordered. 40 nuclear missiles erupted from the Reaper's launch tubes. They streaked across space, like angry stars, and slammed into the Devourer ship. The explosions were brilliant white flashes that lit up the darkness. When the light faded, the enemy ship was gone. Nothing remained but glowing debris. "First kill," Hayes reported with grim satisfaction. But the other Devourers were waking up now. They turned toward the Reaper like a pack of wolves focusing on a single sheep. Energy beams began to lance out from their weapons, filling space with deadly light. "Evasive maneuvers," Morrison commanded. Stone threw the ship into a spinning dive. That would have torn apart a normal vessel. But the Reaper was built to withstand incredible stress. It twisted through space like a dancer, avoiding the enemy fire. "Railguns, target the big one on our starboard side," Morrison ordered. The ship's main weapons were massive electromagnetic cannons that fired metal slugs at incredible speed. 3 railgun rounds hit the targeted Devourer ship, punching through, its hull like bullets through paper. The alien vessel shuddered and began to leak atmosphere. But it didn't die. As Morrison watched in horror, the holes in the ship's hull began to close. The Devourer was healing itself by consuming nearby space. "Debris? They can repair damage," Morrison said. "Ares, update combat protocols. We need to hit them hard enough that they can't regenerate." "Understood, Captain," switching to maximum firepower mode. The Reaper dove into the heart of the enemy formation. Morrison's ship was outnumbered 200 to 1, but it had advantages the Devourers didn't expect. It was fast. While the alien ships lumbered through space like giant whales, the Reaper darted between them like a minnow. It would appear next. To an enemy vessel, unleash devastating firepower, then disappear before they could respond. It was smart. Ares calculated the best targets and attack patterns in milliseconds. The ship struck at weak points, exploited gaps in the enemy formation, and used the Devourer's own size against them, and it was utterly without mercy. Morrison's crew fought like demons. Hayes coordinated attacks that would have horrified Council observers. When a Devourer ship was damaged, the Reaper would finish it off immediately. When enemy vessels tried to retreat, they were hunted down and destroyed. There were no prisoners taken, no quarter given. "Target that cluster of ships near the gas giant's moon," Morrison ordered. "Use the proximity mines." The Reaper fired a spread of mines that attached themselves to asteroids near the enemy ships. When the Devourers moved closer to investigate, the mines exploded simultaneously. 4 alien vessels were caught in the blast and torn apart. But the enemy was learning too. The Devourers began to work together, using their superior numbers to trap the human ship. Energy beams converged on the Reaper from multiple directions. Hull breach on Deck 7, Park reported. Emergency bulkheads are holding, but we've lost atmosphere in 3 compartments. Casualty report? Morrison asked. 2 dead, 5 wounded. Medical teams are responding. Morrison felt each death like a punch to the gut, but he couldn't let emotion cloud his judgment. His crew was dying, but they were taking dozens of enemy ships with them. Stone, get us out of this crossfire. Jump us to the outer edge of their formation. The ship vanished in a flash of light and reappeared 5,000 kilometers away. Before the Devourers could react, the Reaper launched another nuclear missile barrage. This time, Morrison targeted the largest enemy vessel, a monstrous ship that looked like a mechanical squid crossed with a building. The nuclear explosions tore through its hull, and this time the damage was too severe to heal. The giant ship broke apart in a series of secondary explosions. That's their command ship, Ares reported. The other vessels are showing signs of confusion. Morrison smiled grimly. Without their leader, the Devourer fleet was becoming disorganized. Some ships were retreating, others were advancing randomly, and a few had stopped moving entirely. Now, we press the advantage, Morrison said. All weapons, continuous fire. Don't give them time to reorganize. The Reaper began a deadly dance through the enemy formation. It would appear, strike, and vanish before the Devourers could respond. Each attack destroyed 1 or more enemy ships. The alien fleet, which had seemed invincible just an hour ago, was being torn apart by a single human vessel. But the ship was paying a price. The Reaper's hull was scarred by energy beams. Several weapon systems were offline. The crew was exhausted from constant battle. Captain, Park called from engineering. I'm reading massive structural stress throughout the ship. We can't keep this up much longer. Morrison checked his tactical display. They had destroyed over 60 enemy ships, but more than 150 were still active. And now those ships were beginning to coordinate their attacks again. Hayes, how many missiles do we have left? 12 nuclear warheads, sir. Maybe 20 conventional missiles. Not enough to finish the job, Morrison realized, but maybe enough to cripple the enemy fleet before the Earth Defense Force arrived. Ares, plot a course that takes us through the densest part of their formation. We're going to make our last missiles count. Captain, such a course will place us in extreme danger. We may not survive. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was battered but determined. They knew the odds, but they weren't backing down. Ares, we're humans. Extreme danger is where we do our best work. The ship turned toward the heart of the enemy fleet, ready for one final desperate assault. Behind them floated the wreckage of 60 alien vessels. Ahead waited the survivors, angry and focused on revenge. The dance of death was about to reach its climax. The Reaper shuddered as another energy beam hit its port side. Captain Morrison gripped his chair as sparks flew from damaged control panels around the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 4, Park's voice crackled over the intercom. We're losing, atmosphere fast. Morrison looked at his tactical display. The numbers were grim. Over half his crew was dead or wounded. Primary weapons were failing. The ship's hull had more holes than solid metal, but they had destroyed 73 enemy ships. Captain, Stone called from his navigation station. The remaining Devourers are surrounding us. They're not giving us room to maneuver anymore. Morrison studied the enemy formation. The aliens had learned from their losses. Instead of chasing the Reaper around like angry wasps, they were now moving in coordinated groups. Every time Morrison's ship appeared somewhere, enemy vessels were already waiting. They're boxing us in, Hayes said grimly. Smart bastards. How many missiles left? Morrison asked. 8 nuclear warheads, 6 conventional. Morrison did the math in his head. 14 missiles against 141 enemy ships. Not good odds, even for humans. Ares, can we still use the jump drive? Jump drive is functional, but power levels are at 30%. I estimate we have enough energy for perhaps 6 more jumps before the system fails. Morrison nodded. 6 jumps. 14 missiles. And an enemy that was getting smarter every minute. Time for a new strategy. Stone, I want you to plot 6 jump coordinates. Make them random. Asteroid fields, near Jupiter's moons, behind gas clouds. Anywhere we can hide for a few seconds. Sir, random jumps are dangerous. If we appear inside an asteroid, If we don't take risks, we're dead anyway, Morrison interrupted. Plot the coordinates. While Stone worked, Morrison activated the ship-wide intercom. His voice echoed through the damaged corridors where his surviving crew members were fighting fires and sealing hull breaches. All hands. This is the captain. We've hurt them bad, but they're not giving up. Neither are we. We're going to start jumping around the system like ghosts. Hit and run, appear and disappear. Make them think we're everywhere at once. He paused, listening to the sounds of his dying ship. Park, I need everything you can give me from the engines. Hayes, make every shot count. Stone, keep us moving. We're going to show these aliens what happens when humans get desperate. The first jump took them to the asteroid field near Europa. The Reaper appeared between two large rocks, immediately launched 4 missiles at a group of Devourer ships, then vanished before the enemy could return fire. The second jump put them near Io's volcanic surface. The ship used the moon's gravity to slingshot toward another group of enemies, destroyed 2 ships with railgun fire, then jumped away as energy beams lit up the space where they had been. The third jump was behind Jupiter's largest moon. Morrison waited until a patrol of Devourer ships passed by, then struck from behind. 3 more enemy vessels died before they knew what hit them. Captain, Ares reported, the enemy is becoming frustrated. They are spreading their ships throughout the system to try to intercept us. Good, Morrison said. When they spread out, they're easier to kill individually. But the strategy was taking its toll on the Reaper. Each jump drained more power. Each battle caused more damage. Morrison could feel his ship dying around him. Engineering to bridge. Park's voice was strained. Captain, the jump drive is overheating. If we keep pushing it like this, it's going to explode. How many more jumps can we make? 2, maybe 3 if we're lucky. Morrison looked at his tactical display. They had reduced the enemy fleet to about 120 ships, but the Reaper was falling apart. Whole sections of the ship were without power. Life support was failing in several compartments. Stone, where's the Earth Defense Fleet? Still, 2 hours out, sir. They're moving as fast as they can, but they would arrive too late, Morrison realized. The Devourers would have time to regroup and prepare for the Earth ships. The battle would be a massacre, unless the Reaper could do something dramatic in the next 2 hours. Morrison studied the enemy positions. Most of the Devourer ships were now scattered throughout the outer system, hunting for his ship. But about 30 of the largest vessels had gathered near Jupiter itself, probably waiting to see where he would appear next. An idea began to form in Morrison's mind. A terrible, desperate idea. Ares, show me Jupiter's atmospheric composition. Captain, Jupiter is primarily hydrogen and helium, with traces of methane and ammonia. The atmospheric pressure increases dramatically toward the core. What would happen if we detonated all our remaining nuclear warheads in Jupiter's upper atmosphere? Ares was quiet for several seconds. The explosion would be significant. The nuclear fusion would trigger a chain reaction in the hydrogen-rich atmosphere. The blast would be visible from Earth. Hayes looked up from his weapons console. Captain, are you thinking what I think you're thinking? Morrison nodded grimly. We're going to turn Jupiter into a bomb. Stone stared at him. Sir, that's insane. The explosion could destroy everything within 50,000 kilometers, including us, including those 30 Devourer ships camping near Jupiter, Morrison pointed out. And it will send a message to the rest of them. Park's voice came over the intercom. Captain, even if we survive the initial blast, the radiation will kill us within hours. Morrison looked around his bridge. His crew was exhausted, wounded, and scared. But they weren't backing down. They knew what was at stake. I'm not ordering anyone to do this, Morrison said quietly. We can try to run, jump to the outer system and wait for the Earth fleet. Maybe some of us will survive. Hayes laughed bitterly. And let those things eat our families while we hide behind asteroids? Not a chance, Captain. Stone nodded agreement. My sister lives on Mars. If we don't stop these bastards here, she's dead anyway. Park's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain, the crew has voted. We're with you. Let's light up Jupiter like a Christmas tree. Morrison felt a surge of pride in his people. Humans facing impossible odds, choosing to fight rather than flee. This was what made his species special. All right then. Stone, plot a jump that puts us right in Jupiter's upper atmosphere. Hayes, program all nuclear warheads to detonate simultaneously. Park, give me everything the engines have got. As his crew prepared for their final gambit, Morrison opened a channel to Admiral Blake on Earth. Admiral, this is Morrison. We've reduced the enemy fleet to about 120 ships, but the Reaper is finished. We're going to make one last strike that should take out another 30 or 40 of them. Blake's face appeared on the screen and Morrison could see the man understood what he was really saying. Jake, there has to be another way. Admiral, when the Earth Defense Fleet arrives, they'll be facing 80 ships instead of 200. That's the difference between victory and defeat. Between Earth surviving and Earth dying. Blake was quiet for a moment. Then he saluted. It's been an honor serving with you, Captain. Morrison returned the salute. Tell Earth that humans don't go quietly into the dark. He closed the channel and turned to his crew. Final jump in 30 seconds. All hands, brace for impact. Tadai, Reaper began to vibrate as its damaged systems prepared for one last jump. Around Jupiter, 30 massive Devourer ships waited in formation, unaware that death was about to fall from the sky. Jump drive charged, Stone reported. All warheads, armed, Hayes confirmed. Engines at maximum power, Park added. Morrison took a deep breath. Ares, initiate final jump. Target, Jupiter's upper atmosphere, all weapons free. Jump initiated. Time to target, 10 seconds. The bridge lights dimmed as every remaining bit of power flowed to the jump drive. Outside the windows, the stars began to blur. It's been an honor serving with you all, Morrison said to his crew. The Reaper vanished from normal space carrying 12 determined humans toward their destiny among the clouds of Jupiter. Behind them, the wreckage of 73 alien ships drifted in the darkness. Ahead waited 30 more enemies and a gas giant full of explosive potential. The impossible stand was about to reach its fiery conclusion. The Reaper materialized in Jupiter's upper atmosphere like a falling star. Around the ship, thick clouds of hydrogen and helium swirled in massive storms that had raged for centuries. Deploy all warheads, Captain Morrison ordered. Tom Hayes pressed the launch button with steady hands. 8 nuclear missiles shot out from the dying ship and spread throughout Jupiter's atmosphere. Each warhead was programmed to detonate in exactly 60 seconds. Missiles away, Hayes reported. 60 seconds. To detonation. Morrison looked at the main screen. 30 Devourer ships floated in formation around Jupiter, their massive hulls dark against the planet's swirling clouds. They had detected the Reaper's arrival and were moving to attack. They're coming for us, Rick Stone said from his navigation station. Let them come, Morrison replied. They're about to learn why you don't mess with humans. Energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, striking Jupiter's atmosphere around the Reaper. But the thick gases absorbed most of the damage. The human ship was protected by the very planet it was about to turn into a weapon. 30 seconds to detonation, Hayes announced. Morrison activated the ship-wide intercom one last time. All hands, this is the captain. In 30 seconds, we're going to light the biggest fire in human history. It's been an honor fighting alongside you. Earth will remember what we did here. Through the ship's corridors, his surviving crew members braced themselves. Lisa Park held onto her engineering console as sparks flew around her. Stone gripped his navigation controls as the ship shook from enemy fire. Hayes kept his eyes on the countdown timer. 10 seconds, Hayes called out. Morrison watched the Devourer ships closing in. They were so close now that he could see the details of their twisted hulls. Tentacles and organic growths covered their surfaces like some nightmare. Mixture of machine and beast. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The nuclear warheads detonated simultaneously throughout Jupiter's hydrogen-rich atmosphere. What happened next had never been seen before in the history of the galaxy. The hydrogen around each warhead ignited instantly, creating 8 miniature suns in Jupiter's clouds. But the chain reaction didn't stop there. The fusion spread outward, igniting more hydrogen, which ignited even more. Within seconds, half of Jupiter's upper atmosphere was burning. The explosion was beyond anything Morrison had imagined. A wave of nuclear fire swept outward from the planet's surface, moving faster than light itself. The 30 Devourer ships caught in the blast simply vanished, turned to atoms in the space of a heartbeat. The Reaper was caught at the edge of the firestorm. The ship's hull began to melt as temperatures reached millions of degrees. But somehow, impossibly, the vessel held together just long enough. "Emergency jump!" Morrison shouted over the roar of dying systems. "Get us out of here!" Stone's hands flew over his controls. The jump drive, already damaged beyond repair, gave one final burst of power. The Reaper vanished from Jupiter's burning atmosphere and reappeared in empty space 50,000 kilometers away. But the ship was finished. Hull breaches opened throughout the vessel. The engines went silent. Life support failed in section after section. Morrison looked back at Jupiter and gasped. The entire planet was glowing like a small star. The nuclear chain reaction had turned the gas giant into a fusion furnace that would burn for days. The light was so bright it hurt to look at directly. "My God," Stone whispered. "What have we done?" On the tactical display, Morrison could see the remaining Devourer ships throughout the solar system. They had stopped moving. For the first time since the battle began, the alien fleet seemed uncertain. Hayes managed a weak smile. "I think we got their attention, Captain." But the celebration was short-lived. Emergency alarms were sounding throughout the ship. Park's voice came over the intercom, strained and weak. "Captain, the reactor is going critical. We have maybe 10 minutes before total system failure." Morrison nodded grimly. He had expected this. The Reaper had given everything it had. Now it was dying, taking its crew with it. "All hands, abandon ship," Morrison ordered. "Get to the escape pods." "Sir," Hayes protested, "there are only 4 pods left. Most were destroyed in the battle." Morrison looked around his bridge. 12 crew members had started this mission. Now only 4 were still alive: himself, Hayes, Stone, and Park. The others had died fighting to save Earth. "Then we use what we have," Morrison said quietly. "Everyone to the escape pods, that's an order." "What about you, Captain?" Park asked over the intercom. Morrison smiled sadly. "Someone has to make sure the ship's computer core is destroyed. Can't let these aliens learn our secrets." He was lying, and they all knew it. Morrison was staying because a captain didn't abandon his ship. Even a dying ship. Especially a dying ship that had just saved Earth. "Captain," Hayes started to protest. "Go," Morrison said firmly. "That's a direct order. Get out of here while you still can." Reluctantly, his 3 surviving crew members made their way to the escape pods. Morrison heard them moving through the corridors, their footsteps echoing in the dying ship. Alone on the bridge, Morrison watched as the Earth Defense Fleet finally arrived at Jupiter. 30 pristine council ships dropped out of hyperspace and stopped in shock at what they saw. Jupiter was still burning. The gas giant had become a fusion reactor, casting light across the entire solar system, and scattered around it was the wreckage of 30 Devourer ships, reduced to glowing atoms. Admiral Blake's voice came over the communication system, filled with disbelief. "Jake, what did you do?" Morrison activated his personal communicator. "We showed them what happens when you threaten Earth, Admiral. The remaining Devourer ships are retreating. I count about 90 vessels heading back toward deep space. You destroyed over half their fleet with one ship?" "We destroyed them. With human determination," Morrison corrected. "The ship was just a tool." He watched as his escape pods launched from the Reaper, 3 small vehicles carrying his surviving crew toward the safety of the Earth fleet. They would live to tell the story of what happened here. "Jake, we're sending rescue ships." "No time, Admiral. The reactor is about to go critical. Get your ships clear." Morrison cut the communication link and sat back in his captain's chair. Around him, the bridge was dark except for the glow of Jupiter's burning atmosphere. The ship shuddered as internal explosions tore through its hull. He thought about Earth, safe now behind its wall of burning gas. He thought about his crew, alive because they had chosen to fight instead of flee. He thought about the Devourer fleet, running back to whatever dark corner of space they had come from. The main screen flickered to life one last time, Ares spoke, with her calm, mechanical voice. "Captain, it has been an honor serving with you." "The honor was mine, Ares. You fought like a human today. Thank you, Captain. That is the greatest compliment I could receive." The screen went dark. Morrison closed his eyes and waited. The Reaper's reactor exploded like a small nova, visible from Mars. The ship that had defied impossible odds and saved Earth died as it had lived, in a blaze of glory that lit up the darkness. 3 weeks later, Admiral Blake stood in the congressional hearing room on Earth, facing questions about the unauthorized activation of the prototype warship. "Admiral," the council representative said coldly, "Earth violated 17 treaties by deploying nuclear weapons in space. The UES Reaper used tactics that the galactic community considers war crimes." Blake looked at the alien diplomat with tired eyes. "Counselor, that ship and its crew saved Earth from complete destruction. They faced odds of 200 to 1, and still found a way to win." "By turning a planet into a weapon," the counselor replied. "Such actions are barbaric." Blake stood up slowly. "You want to know what's barbaric? Sitting in committee meetings while colonies burn, forming diplomatic missions to talk to enemies that eat everything in their path, following rules of civilized warfare against an enemy that has no civilization." He activated a holographic display showing the battle statistics. 12 humans in an obsolete prototype ship destroyed 124 alien vessels and saved a solar system. Your civilized fleet would have been slaughtered. The counselor was quiet for a moment. "What Earth did was effective, Admiral, but it was also terrifying. The galaxy is not sure it wants humans as allies if this is how you fight wars." Blake smiled grimly. "Then maybe the galaxy should make sure it never becomes our enemy." The hearing continued for hours, but the outcome was already decided. Earth would face sanctions. The remaining prototype ships would be inspected. Human military doctrine would be studied and criticized. But Earth was safe, and somewhere in the outer rim, the surviving Devourer ships carried a message back to their masters. Humanity was not prey. 6 months later, Blake visited the memorial built at the coordinates where the Reaper had died. A simple marker floating in space, bearing the names of the 12 crew members who had given their lives. "Captain Morrison," Blake said quietly, "the galaxy thinks we're monsters now. They're probably right." He looked out at the stars where other threats were stirring in the darkness. But monsters are exactly what the universe needs sometimes, and we're very good at being monsters when we have to be. The memorial drifted silently through space, a reminder that humans would do whatever it took to protect their home, even if it meant becoming the thing that others feared most. The stars held many dangers, but now they knew that Earth held something more dangerous still: humans who refused to die quietly.